Okay, so we are up to Pei Ches Amar Aleph, Gufa. Yeah, about one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 lines down from the top. Yeah. So we're doing this sugya. It comes up fairly often. We still haven't figured out what the American law. We didn't work too hard on it, but
Where are you starting from?
eight
I
lines
know
down from the
pay.
top.
Okay,
I
I
just
didn't hear.
said
Okay, I
eight
didn't
lines
hear.
down from the
Okay,
top.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Yes. Um. Um. Yeah. So we're trying to figure out what the difference is between American law and halacha. I think American law certainly this, but it could be it's not. I mean, return policy is also not a Jewish thing. There's such thing as a return policy unless you didn't make a kinyan. But every store does it because they don't want to lose business. So I'm not sure if bismanazeh you go into a store, you go into a Jewish store, yeah, saying David, let's say somebody does break a glass in the store. Can they just walk away and call over the janitor, or they have to go over to the manager and say that they broke it? And the manager says, "Okay, don't worry about it." He has the authority.
I think more often than not, they walk away and they don't tell anyone. But if somebody sees, then they'll say something. But 99% of the time, we will not charge a customer if they drop something in the store.
Right, but I'm saying, but do they have to go ask for mechila? L'chayra, he didn't. They have to ask somebody in the store for mechila. They can't just walk away. Based on
Very,
today's Gemara,
That's
but they say
pretty
yesterday was.
obvious. Why should they be able to walk away?
No, I think in America, I used to think in American law, it's not your achrayas until you buy it.
It's not
But I don't
true.
know if that's true. I don't know if that's
It's
true
not
at all.
true.
But what's the difference between this and just Mazik? I don't know. The guy breaks the window on a car by accident. He shouldn't have to pay. Like, you broke something in my store, so you don't have to pay because it's pre-Kenyan versus Hezek. It's
Well, the
just
bottom line,
damage.
yes, it has to fit into the parameters of what's a Kenyan and what's not. If it's not a Kenyan, then you don't have to pay.
But if I walk by your house and I throw a baseball and I break the window, I didn't make a Kenyan and I don't have to pay you because I damaged your property. It's like, isn't it just a damage of property?
No, because that's here it's an inus happened.
But I
I
thought
mean,
in Adam.
I want you touching the stuff on the shelf. I want because if you don't touch it, you're not going to buy it. So I
You
want
don't
you
want
to
them
touch it.
breaking it.
But now something happened that while you were touching it, possibly buying it,
Right.
before you bought it, something happened to it. So what's the halacha now, or what's your achrayas? But I don't want you walking by my house and throwing a baseball in it. That nobody wants that. But I want you touching things. I want you touching things in the store.
You want the people to touch the store, but you don't put up a sign. You don't put up a sign. Don't touch. Touch, but don't break. So you put up a sign. Touch, but don't break. So then
Why
I
do you
hear
have to
it.
put that sign up
What?
for? Maybe the default is touch and don't break. But you know where you get into this? You get this is in Yonah Diyama, Lulavim and Esroigim. You know, the guys, how many people go look for the tumus to look to see if it's split, and then they split it. Right? You gotta know, you gotta be careful. Because
Yeah, but they l'chayra hurt themselves, the Australian sellers. They don't put prices on anything. So there's no pisuk damim. So the Kenyan doesn't do anything.
it's true. That's true. That's a good point, right? Meaning, yeah, and it doesn't have a set price either, l'chayra.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, okay, these are the things to keep in mind as we do this sugi
I
here.
wonder, does that make a difference if the store puts prices on the shelves or not?
Could
There's
be.
no price, then there's no thing. There's nothing.
It could be if there's no price, then it's not. Then it's worse. Right. Okay. So let's see in the Gemara. Yeah, Gufa. Yes, Amar Shmuel. So Shmuel said, "Anoito kli min uman lebakrei." If somebody takes a kli from an uman to check it out, benenas biyodoi. It doesn't say it was a pesheya. It says it was an einus. Chayiv, he's chayiv to pay for it. Okay, that's straight up. Sounds like a guy picks up a jar of pickles in the grocery store, and an einus happens. I don't know how you define einus. That's a whole different story. But let's say an einus happens. So then he's chayiv to pay for it. Oh, but hani mili who dekitzi damel, like Gershon just said. That's only if there was a set price. Meaning they don't have to. I mean, if a guy picks up and he says he's going to go with the esrog, you're going to go handle with the seller, and you say he's going to say $50. You're going to say no, $40. And so then there's no. You didn't make a kinyan on it, right? If he knew how much it was and he picks it up and he's looking at it, oh, this is nice, and then that's a kinyan. But if not, then it's not a kinyan, right? And the Rashbam adds from the Gemara Nedarim that it also has to be something that people want. If it's not something that people want, meaning, the guy can, if it's something that's like, how do you call high demand? Right? Then it's considered like a kinyan. But if not, then he doesn't. Okay, so that's the caveat here. That it has to be, according to the Gemara, it has to be a set price. And from the Gemara Nedarim, the Rashbam says that it has to be something that people want. Fine. There was a guy who went up to literally the house of the butcher, meaning he went to the meat store. Agba Atma de Basra, and he lifted a piece of meat, and he was looking at it. Yeah, so Bahadi took Agba when he lifted it up. Also, Parsha Maramine, Parsha. I don't know what makes a difference. I guess it's just the story. But a guy on a horse came and grabbed it from him. I guess he was holding it up to the window. I guess they held up meat to examine it by the window or something like that, or outside the store. And then some guy came and grabbed it out of his hands. So also commander of Yemar.
He was checking the hechsher.
Maybe.
He was checking the hechsher.
He was checking the nicker, yeah.
Well, we had the case where the bird took it, right?
You have the case where the bird took it, yeah. And the chayyid would be the same thing. So chayve l'shlume dame. So he has to pay. Rav Yemer said he has to pay. But that's only when the money, when it was a set price. I mean, he knew how much the guy was going to charge him for this piece of meat. Had he not known what he would have charged for this meat, then he would not have been kind, and it would not be his responsibility. Another story. There was a guy who brought kari is glass, gourds, or what's the other thing we use? Glass. It's like cucumbers or something like that. Also, so this guy had very popular gourds. So the whole world, which is obviously an exaggeration, came and they were just grabbing. So now he had no idea who was taking the product and who wasn't. So Amalahu, again, it looks like the same. When they bring out a brand new box of esrogim, the seller has no idea. They just jump at it, or love it. Everybody jumps at it. Right, so Amar Lahu, he said to them, he had an eitzah, Harein Muktashin L'Shemaim. He just made them all hektish. Right? And then Mamela, they wouldn't be able to take them. I don't know what that would gain him, because now he just made them hektish. Okay. Also, the commander of Kahana, Amar Lahu, he said, Eino the maktish davar she'ein shaloi. You can't be maktish it. When they picked it up, it was already theirs. So Mamela, it's too late to make it into hektish. Again, that's only when the price was set. But if the price was not set, then then it's still in the reshus of the owner, the shopper aktish, and he could have made it, and he did make it. It's his hektish he did was good, right? Yeah. Fine. So Taner Rabbanon, Alekeach Yerek min Ashuk. If somebody's buying vegetables in the shuk, and this is talking about where he was an Amoritz. Again, this is another area where the Gemara leaves out an important part. I don't know. I guess the Gemara thought we're smarter, but the Rashbam says he's a chaver, an educated person, taking the vegetables from an Amoritz. Ubirer. And he's being buried. He's going through the vegetables and he's picking out the ones that he likes. He puts them aside. And he takes it and he puts it down. Even if he's doing this a whole day, like he's not chayiv. He's not koinen. He's not chayiv ma'aser. Meaning, why would he be chayiv and ma'aser? You're not chayiv ma'aser until you buy it. So, meaning the reason why he's chayiv and ma'aser is because it's coming from an amorit. So it's what we call demai. So when you buy from an Amoritz, you have to take off Meiser. You don't have to take off Trumas. You have to take off Meiser. So we're saying that he's not Chayiv in Meiser. Gomer Beliboy Liknos. If he decided in his mind that he's going to be Kainit, then he's kind of in a Chayiv in Meiser. Then he's Chayiv in Meiser. So now, but the problem is, what's he supposed to do here? He can't give it back because Shekvar is Chayiv in Meiser. Once he picked it up and he knew he was going to buy it, and he's already Chayiv in Meiser. Ula Asra to take off Meiser, he can't do it. Shekvar mafchisim bedamim, because it's worth less. Meaning, what is he supposed to do? Take off Meiser and then give it back to the owner? So now he's not giving back everything that he took. Okay, tzad. So then what's he supposed to do? Ma'asroi, so he takes off the Meiser, and like the main Meiser. And then he gives the Demei Meiser, the amount that the Meiser was worth, he gives back to the fellow, to the seller. Okay?
What's the Gomer Liknos? He's buying it or not?
If he did.
If he bought it, why is he giving anything back?
He can't. No, let's say that's another thing. Again, I'm telling you, there's so many things left out here, and this couple of dafim. Maybe I don't know why it's leaving out so many important points. But the Rashbam says that if he decides he wants to return it, he can't. There's no way for him to return it. Right? That's what it means. That part is missing from the Gemara. Again, he bought it. We're saying if he was Gomar Beliba, he bought it. That's what we've been saying, as long as it has a set price. Now he decides he wants to give it back. How's he giving it back?
Didn't we say 3 Mishnayos ago that there's no such thing as a return policy?
Correct. But I'm assuming it means if the owner is willing to take it back, you could do that. I have no idea. I just assumed that the owner is willing to take it back. I don't think you could force him to take it back. Right? Yeah. So anyway, so the Gemara says, just because he decided in his head that he's buying it, so he's kaina and he's chayiv and meiser. He didn't tell the guy that he's buying it. I mean, he's in a vegetable store, right? All he's doing is putting vegetables aside. All of a sudden, he's kaina it. Oh, we're talking about a Yerushalayim. Going Rav Safra, like Rav Safra, the Kaim ben Nafshay. Rav Safra was Kaim in his nefesh, v'doiver emes bilvavoi, that you to speak emes in his heart. Right. This is the Maisa. Where's the Maisa? Where's the Maisa with Rav Safra?
Is that the Shabbos one where he didn't want to fix the fence because he thought about it on Shabbos?
No. This is where he was in the middle of davening Shema, and a guy came to him and asked him if he'll sell it for a price, and he was quiet because he was saying Shema.
It's in Brachas. The Gemara in Brachas.
It's in Brachas?
Yeah.
So he said, right, sure. Yeah, so, okay, so he said, is it in Dalid?
That's parak, probably.
Yeah.
It could be the first parak. Yeah, anything I remember, that's something I remember.
All right, there you go. We'll take your word for it.
You mentioned something about Marcus in here.
Marcus there it brings, but there it's not the story. It just brings Doiver Emes Bava. I only because my screen hot sinks to it. Don't think because I have any recollection what it says more on Marcus.
If a Mashiach bothers you during davening and you say to yourself, I'm going to punch him in the face when I finish, you have to punch him in the face when you finish?
No, you should punch him in the middle.
Your Kona has face then.
You should punch him right then and there.
Well, then if I punch him, then I have to, then Mamalish, I should be giving him the tzedakah. If I'm going to punch him.
That's one of those things the Gemara left out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, by the way,
I tried looking it up but there's no Rav Safra in the article book.
Very good. Maybe call up Archel. Maybe he'll get a free book.
Anyways, the story goes that he was in the middle of Shema, and the guy made an offer, and he said in his head that he would take the offer, and then the guy thought he was just quiet because he didn't want it, so he raised the offer, and then when he finished, he told him, I think that's the way the story goes, he told him, I'm going to give you the original price, right? Which I think it was in the halacha text last week. I sent it out from the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, who says that that's what you're supposed to do. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch paskins this way. I don't know if Shulchan Aruch paskins this way, but Kitzur Shulchan Aruch paskins this way. That you should do it if you made up in your head.
But it does sound like from this Gemara that once you have, like in modern times, with a return policy everywhere, so even if you're Konet, since you have the ability to always return it, if you change your mind, maybe you're not Konet, right?
Correct. Yeah. If you meaning when you pick it up, you have to know the price, right? And you have to have in das to be kind. But your question, a good question, and if you don't coin it, so that means you're damaging somebody's property. Like I'm assuming it's because you're an oinus, so then mamela you're exempt. But I don't know.
I thought for Adam onus is not a patur.
That's like Adam is muad the island, but right. But that I don't that how that works is a little. Meaning he's a muad if he goes. Meaning we look at that there's no such thing as how do you call it tam. There's no such thing as tam by humans, right? But if he's an einus, so he's an einus, right? I think. I don't remember the exact.
I think we can more attention over to Machlokes Abai and Rava. What part of the einus is? It means an einus, like Neva Aveda is an einus, but it's one part of the key, one part of the einus. Machlokes is pointing to them which one is part of the einus, but it means the part of the einus is chayim, but an actual einus Rachmana Patra.
Right?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see the Mishnah. Asitan. So now continuing on the, I would say the midas you have to have it. That's a pun. The midas, the seller, meaning how a seller has to behave himself. Meaning what's the proper way to make sure you don't rip somebody off. So a sitan, right? So sitan is a guy who's a wholesaler. He has to wipe down his measurings, whatever his measuring sticks, his measuring cups, every 30 days. Right? Ubalabayis echad l'shnei masachodesh. A balabayis only has to wipe it down once every 12 months. Meaning when you use a measuring cup or anything like that, so eventually there's a buildup of liquid that hardens on the bottom. And then what's going to happen is that the measurements are going to get smaller and you're going to rip off new customers. Right? So you have to clean it. You have to clean it.
Doesn't it depend on how much it's being used?
Yes, l'chayra.
So then why are we giving numbers?
Well, we are. Well, we're saying that be'erich, since that's fakir, that's what it is giving numbers. It's saying that the guy that does a lot of business is once every 30 days. A homeowner or whatever, a regular, what do you call, only has to do once a year. Right? I'm assuming, that's what it is. Right? That's why there's a difference because of how much volume that they do. Now, why don't you're saying, Zev, why don't they just say, look inside? It's, hey, if you see an accumulation, wipe it down. That's really what you're asking, right? Yeah, I guess this is a form of that, but Enochanami, I don't know. I think back then they left more up to people's discretion. But I don't know, maybe less because they're giving you a time. I don't know.
Maybe this is the makar for the paiskim today that hold that something is mikrat and a sakin. So a knife can't really is more than echad b'shishim connected the knife because of mamashis on it. How you can't see it. So you can't see it, okay, there's still mikrat for it for some reason. This is the same idea.
Maybe. Yeah. Okay, maybe. Okay, very good. So, anyways, the point is the more often you do it, the more often you use measurements, the more often you have to wipe it down. The opposite. I'm sorry. That's it. He has to. Rabbi Gamliel says you do the opposite. Why? Because the more often you measure, it doesn't get dried because it's constant. It's constantly wet. Somebody who doesn't do it so often, then it dries. So then Mamela, he has to be more. He has to be more careful, right? So that's quite an interesting what that machloikus is based on, right? Is it a Metzius? I'm not sure. Okay, chenveni. Then the chenveni. How much is a chenveni? As a regular storekeeper. The kaneach midaisa pamayim b'Shabbos. He has to do twice a Shabbos, right? Which that's also an interesting. What do you mean twice a Shabbos? It means every 3.5 days, or he can wipe it on Motzei Shabbos and Sunday morning, and then not the rest of the week, right? I mean, the way we say it by checking your mezuzahs twice in 7 years, it means every 3.5 years, right? Okay, so umamacha mishkaloisa pamachas b'Shabbos. His weights, he has to wipe once a week. Right?
When do the people who have electric weights now have to do it?
I don't know. I think the government checks once a year, right?
Who cares?
The
what
government does come and
does?
check. We had that. They came and checked.
They do check.
They do check. They come official weights and they measure everything.
Interesting.
Can't say it's every year, but maybe it's supposed to be. Can't say they're supposed to come, but they don't come every year.
Is it Nageya halachically? Is it Nageya? I mean, they don't put the food straight on the scale nowadays.
What are you talking about? You walk into Mechins, and they put the thing and they weigh it. What do you mean?
Yeah, they just they put the aluminum pan on, and then they negate that from the scale. Then they count it as 0 with the pan, and then they put the food in the pan.
They do, or they put the pan.
Meaning, like depending on what the thing is in. If it's a 9x13, so they'll tear it whatever that weight is minus 0.07 or whatever, and depending on the item, then like we had in 550, we would have the sheets between the novas. So my father said each sheet you gotta, like, if you put in for a pound of nova, it's a lot of paper. It's heavy paper. It counts. So he would take off like a little bit.
Interesting. Right. So but now there's our weights don't. I'm saying there's no liquid. There's no accumulation of stuff. I'm saying the digital weights, the Rabban, what you saying, meaning the digital weights, I guess somehow lose the calibration. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah, why shouldn't they have to check them?
Yeah, l'chara they do. I don't know halachically how often you have to. Probably based on the mitzias. How often does a machine like that need to be recalibrated? Right.
And I'm sure some places do put directly on the scale.
I mean, you see the same type of thing all over the place. Every gas station it gets checked every year. Every pump, most scales they have a sticker from a
the weights and measurements. Yeah. So I don't know, but halachically it's interesting. I'm assuming it would be based on the metzias of how often these machines go bad. Right. Okay, so mamacha mishkaloisa pamachas b'Shabbos has to wipe his weights once a week. Mekaneach maznayim al kol mashkal, but he has to wipe the maznayim, is the scales, once for every time he weighs it. Right? Why? Because it gets, since they're more they're deeper, so stuff can get stuck at the bottom more often there. That's all if you're measuring liquids. But if it's something dry, you don't need to. Right? Because it doesn't stick. It doesn't stick. Right? Fine. On top of base. And you're chayiv to be machriya. Machriya means to weigh it down by a tefach. Meaning the seller has to make sure that he does honest weights and measurements. So Mamela, he has to tilt it a little bit in the favor of the buyer. Right?
Yeah, what does it mean, the tefach? What does that mean exactly?
Meaning that it should weigh because you're doing weights. This is the way I understand it.
I understand, but what's the tefach?
That's how much. That's how much heavier weight there has to be on one side than the other side. That's how much extra should you give?
Is inches. It's not weight,
right? But that it is because the more the weight it is, the lower it's going to go. I think. If you have to put on enough extra stuff that it goes to tell. I mean, because like you said, it could be totally in what you're putting on there, right? A pound. What does it go? A pound of feather. How does it go? A pound of feathers is a pound of gold.
No, they
right?
weigh the same. Yes.
Right. They weigh the same. Right. So meaning you can't say you have to put on an extra ounce. Well, I guess the extra ounce you could say that's true. You probably could. But you can't say an amount. You just say how much you're putting on it that it lowers one side by a tefach.
You'll notice a lot of stores when they sell you the salads, they're 8-ounce containers and they write 7 ounces on them.
Is that so?
Yeah, because legally they don't want to say 8 ounces, get measured, and then it's below. So they'd rather say 7 ounces and give a little extra.
Ataka. So then that's what this mission is saying. I wanted to take a muster out of it that, we're talking to Elul now, almost by slichas, so we're all getting weighed, right? We weighed it. Hashem is the seller, right? So we're the buyers, I think. Hashem's got to make sure it's tilted. We don't have to be perfect. You just, got to be in the air. Hashem is going to give us the extra so that we should be. Is that too much a Hasidic Shabbat for Motzei Shabbos? I hope I'm right. Yeah. Doesn't mean we don't have to do tshuva.
I think Zev was concerned with this term tefach is a linear measurement, not a weight.
Measurement.
That's true. It's not a weight. It's obviously not a weight measurement, but
what does that mean?
That's
what I don't understand. What does that mean?
The scale. The scale has two sides. So the side of the seller can go down a tefach to the benefit of the buyer.
Let's say that doesn't explain anything.
So straight is even. Everything is even. If they're both sides of the scales are on the same side, they're even. One side has to sink because it's heavier.
My question exactly what Achman said. Why is the Gemara Mishnah giving a linear thing and not a weight?
It depends
Zev, it's the old scales. There's two sides.
It depends what you're weighing.
You put the potatoes on one side and there's a rock on the other. So if the rock is a 1 pound rock and the potatoes weigh a pound, so you got to put more than just the rock. You have to put something else so the scale goes down and you give the guy extra potatoes to make sure.
Zev understands that. Zev gets that, but that's not a linear measurement.
That's the point because you can't specify ounces or pounds.
You want the scale to move down, so you put something else on.
Correct. It doesn't matter.
He's just asking, why not just say put an extra pound? That's what you're saying.
You can't because that's not a measurement. What if you're doing saffron? What if you're doing something that's worth, like, are you measuring ounces or something in pounds or kilos? You can't just come up with a measurement. But if you say a distance, then it doesn't matter what weights you use. The distance is equal no matter what weight you use.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Okay, one second. Well, let's wait. Can we put it on hold till tomorrow's daf? Tomorrow's daf, Bez Hashem, will discuss this a little bit more, which may make it more confusing. No guarantees, but it's going to give more information based on what you're measuring, what you're weighing, etc. Anyway, so you got to give. Bottom line is you have to be machriya for a tefach for the buyer. But let's say he's doing ayin ba'ayin, right? Meaning the Rashbam says, but symptom, you're doing it exact. You're not doing this machriya thing, which the Gemara is going to discuss exactly what's going on here. Do you have to do this? Or do you not have to do this? Right? So again, ayin ba'ayin noisan like girumin. Then he has to give him some extra stuff. Like Michael was saying, you got to give a little extra in order to make sure you're not ripping anybody off. Echad la sara belach. How much do you have to give? Now, this really requires crunching of numbers. At least in the Gemara, it's going to 1 in 10 by liquid. Ve'echad la esrim beyavish, and 1 in 20 of dry ones. Meaning, for every 20, you have to add on 1. Right? which we'll see in the Gemara exactly how this goes. Malkim Shanagu Lamud Bedaka. If the normal way in the place that you're weighing is to use small measurements, Lo Yomud Begasa, then don't use large measurements. Right? And meaning the pieces that you use to measure. If you're using small, if the minig is to use small ones, and obviously you use multiple small ones depending on how much you're trying to weigh, then don't use a big one. And if the minig is to use a big one, don't use a small one. So Magam Shnogu Lamed Bedaka Lo Yomad Begasa. Begasa Lo Yomad Bedaka. Then limchayk, if they do it as a smooth, meaning when you have a measurement, so you can do a heaping, like they say, a heaping teaspoon, right? Which is not just level to the cup that you're measuring. It can go up above the
Kiddush.
A kiddush, let's say, yeah, like something like that. Or I was thinking more when you make a coffee with a big spoonful.
You don't make coffee.
I know I don't make coffee. Yes, but I'm trying to think of, man, how I would make a coffee if I decide to start. How would you say a heaping teaspoon, or do you smooth it off? Man, you're selling somebody a teaspoon of coffee. So do you give a heaping teaspoon, or you flatten it out, right? So limchayk lo yigdosh. If it's in a town that they do it flat, then don't give a lot. And ligdosh lo yimchayk, and if it's ligdosh, then don't flatten it out. Which you have to understand why. Why would that be? Right? What's wrong to give extra? Right? So we have to see that in the Gemara. Meaning, you understand limchayk. I mean ligdosh lo yimchayk. If the minig is to give a heaping, and which Rashbam says is a third more, then you can't give flattened out. You're ripping the guy off. But if it's the minig to give it flattened, you give heaping, what could be wrong? You're giving him extra, right? Okay, we'll have to see in the Gemara. Okay, so minani mili. How do we know that you have to be, what do you call it, generous in your measurements? Amar Ishlakish, Amar Kra, Evan Shleim of a tzedek. You have to have a full, perfect stone and tzedek, right? It has to be proper and complete. Tzedek mishalcha v'tenlo. It has to be tzaddik on your side, and you have to then give it to him. Right? So you have to have perfect weights. So the Gemara says, "Ihachi aim b'seifa." If that's the case, so what about the seifa? How you shoykoloi ayin ba'ayin? If he's weighed ayin ba'ayin, meaning he's doing exact, nice and like girum, and he has to give him a little extra. V'yachra daraisa. But if this concept of having weights that are perfect and good, which means that you have to add a little extra, is a daraisa. So how do you ever do equal? Meaning, the Gemara is thinking now that the pasuk is telling us that your weights have to be great, and you can never weigh 50-50, right? So if that's the case, so then how you makayim that if you're doing ayin ba'ayin? So Gemara says, what it means is the Reisha is talking about in a place based on the minig. When the Reish Lakish said it in, he's talking about the Sefer, which is if it's in the minig, the place to weigh perfectly, and then you give a little extra, then you have to give that extra. You give it to him. Meaning, it doesn't mean in the Havamina we thought that the weights have to be perfect, which they do, meaning, and you have to give extra based on the weights. Now we're saying no, just make sure that whenever you're selling something to somebody, you're definitely in the plus column. Yeah, okay. But kama girumen, and how much is girumen? Amarav echad me'asara belitra belach la'asara litrin. It's 1/10 of a litra, which is a measurement, for every 10 litrin when we're talking about by liquid. Right? Basically, that's 100th. The way
1%.
It's 1%, right? Because it's 1/10 of a litra when there's 10 liters. Right? So you got to add on 1%. Yeah, 1%. That's what it is. Yeah. Okay, now Gemara continues with that. So it says, it's 1/10 when it's liquid and 1/20th when it's dry, a dry measurement. So they had a shayla. Heichi ka'amar. How are we saying the measurement? Echad me asara belach la asara delach. It's 1/10 of lach for when there's 10 litras of lach.
They had to say this confusing?
I know, yeah, it's confusing.
I couldn't make an easier way to say this.
I don't know. They didn't know that it was on a Motzei Shabbos, the daf.
On a Tuesday night, this would be easier?
I don't know. I guess it depends what you ate for supper. But so echad me asara belach la asara delach. Right, 1/10 of, like we just said, basically 100th. The echad me esrim beyavish, and it's a 20th when it's dry, which is when there's 20 of yavish, which would then be, I think, 0.5%. Right, 1/200.
Quarter.
This one is quarter. This is half. No. The next one.
It's half in both directions. It's echad me esrim for esrim, not echad me esrim for asara.
I left out one esrim. I hear.
That'd be like 1/400th.
1/400th. Yeah.
A quarter of 1%.
You have to count both 20s. Dilma or echad me asara, 1 out of 10. La asara de lach ula esrim de yavish, when it's 10 of lach and 20 of yavish, which makes it, that's going to be 0.5%.
Right.
Yeah, because you're only doing 10. Yeah. Basically, the point is the Gemara is asking, is it 0.25% or 0.5% by dry? Thank you. Teku. That's when I originally saw it, I say, okay, and I'm going to teku this before the question 2, and I'll be in the same place, right? Yeah, and I hope Hashem doesn't measures me in the plus pile thing for this one, right?
Well, David, you're the only guy who has to know this, so you make sure you know it.
Yeah. I am not the owner of the company, but I hear you.
Fakir is probably scarier for me than for him. I sell food by weight.
Oh,
there you go. Right.
Hold up your thumb, Gershon. Let's see how big your thumb is.
Yeah. Okay. So now we get into the scary Gemaras here. So Amar Ablevi. Kasha Einchin shall midas Yoisame Einchin shall arise. Now midas here doesn't mean midas. I mean, it's the same word. Midas doesn't mean I don't even know how do you touch midas. I mean, here it means measurements, behavior, I guess.
What
measures?
What weight?
Here it means measurements, but right. So kasha Einchin shall midas Yoisame Einchin shall arise. If your midas are incorrect, then the punishment is going to be worse than arayis. Shazen Amar Behen Kel. Right? This one, it says by Znus, it says Kel, ki yes kol ha-te'evas of Kel, the te'evas of Hashem. Right? V'zen Amar Behen Eila. And by here, it says Eila, ki te'evas Hashem elekech kol oisei Eila, kol oisei Ovel. Right? Okay, so what? Umay mashu the high kel kashahu. And how do you know that the word kel is something kasha? Dichsiv be'es keli haaretz lokach, and he took keli haaretz, the strong people, and he took them. Right. So memela.
That's keli or ele?
Well, it's ele. I'm saying, I was just getting stuck in the. Maybe it means ele, but we're transferring it to the word kel. By us, it means kel. Right. So ele means it means strong. So if ale is strong, if ali, which we're saying means kel, is strong, so then with a hey is even stronger. Right? So there's a bigger punishment than that. So the Gemara says, Gabay Arayas Nami Ksiv Ela. It says Ela by Arayas. So the Gemara answers, Midas Mikaras. Now that's telling you that don't think that you make a Gezerah Shava, that it tells you that if your measurements are off, that you chayiv karas. Okay, the elamai odfai. So then, if there's chorus for znus, and midas doesn't have chorus, and then why are you saying that the punishment for midas is greater than for znus? So Gemara answers the Hastam Efsher b'tshuva, because by znus you could do tshuva, which is also very good for el, because by us by znus, right? It's you can't get the worst avera. No, he said the Rashba brings arayis mayelas tshuva. Yovid let tshuva ma'alis. If you do a proper tshuva, you get tshuva. The Rashba says shuvu banim shayvim. Erber mishuvas meshuvasechem, right? And then he brings the Waramakas. Kol chavi krisa shalaku nifteru midei krisasam. But midas, right? So midas, you're stealing from the rabbin. Back in the Gemara, I'm reading that the halcha, you can't do tshuva. You don't know how many thousands of people or hundreds of people, whatever it is, you ripped off. Right? Same way when you steal from the public. So there's no way to do a proper tshuva on that because
class action suit wouldn't trigger tshuva.
I don't know. I get. Well, if you're able to track down each person, yeah.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Actually, somewhere that you can go to hektish. You could do you can bring it to the base of
it says you could do that, but that's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee, meaning it helps, but it's not a guarantee.
There was something in the paper today that they take the money or something.
Yeah, it was the weirdest ad.
I wanted to show it to you.
Yes. And Punk this week, I don't know if they put it in there because of the doc. There's some guys running an organization now that if you made a mistake, they have some sort of system that if you stole money from the public years ago, that you can somehow they made it that you could pay it back.
Not the first time it was done.
Yeah, I never saw. I don't think I ever saw this before. I don't know how they work.
I was wondering if it was a gimmick.
I heard he gives it to Darche.
Are the administrators of this program getting paid?
I would imagine.
For administrating the program.
Seattle, New York State has this unclaimed funds.
Yeah, but it's
but if you take something from 400 people, right? You don't know who you to return it to. Barrett.
Oh, I understand, but there is a concept of putting it into a fund. I'm a bank. I try to get a hold of you. I can't. They send it to the state.
That's good for the government, but it doesn't mean in Allah that you returned it. Right? If you took it from 400 people in this community, right? So then who are the 400? And all of them might not come claim it. Right? That means you didn't return it.
What? Yeah, okay, I don't know. I'm gonna check that out how they do it. But about point is that to answer Avi's question, it's not a perfect give back. When you give back to the public, like you give it you build a street or build a mikveh or something like that. Right? Yeah. Okay, so let's see. There was something that I wanted to say about this. I don't remember now. Okay, it's worse to steal from a hedjit than to steal from Hashem. Because in the pasuk it says that you have chet comes before the meila. Meila means from the geneva. And by the Beis Hamikdash, it says stealing from hektish. It says meila before the chet. So therefore, it's worse. Fine. Now this next one is this week's parsha. B'amar of Levi, Bo Reish Eloi Midas Kadosh Baruch Hu Midas Basav Adam. The midas of Hakadosh Baruch Hu is not like the midas of humans. Hakadosh Baruch Hu Berek Yisrael be'esem v'shtayim. He benched Hashem with 22, with all 22 letters of the alipes. V'kilulam b'shmayna, and I cursed them with only 8 letters. Berchan be'esem v'shtayim be'im v'chukaisai ad koimamius. Right. Those are all the psukim of the brachas. For kilulam b'shmayna me'im v'chukasai timasu ad v'chukasai ga'alon nasham. Right, so that's the teichacha in Parshas b'chukaisai. Vilu Moshe Rabbeinu, which is this week's parsha, Kisavai, Pirchan b'shmayna, he did the opposite. Not the opposite, but he benched with 8 letters, bench Klal Yisrael with 8 letters. He killed them and he cursed them with 22. Birchan b'shmayna on Tamar Aleph now, because it says v'vahaya im shemaya tishma v'ad la'avda. He killed them v'vahaya im loy sishma ad ve'ein kaina. Right, so you see that humans were much more strict with Klal Yisrael, meaning Moshe Rabbeinu, if you can call him a human, but he was much more strict with Klal Yisrael than the Rabbanu Shalom. Right? Yeah, so there's all Torahs about this, Marsha about this, of how it started, right? And exactly how to calculate all these aleph bays. But okay, we shall stop over here. Fine. Okay, a good devach. Let's